Each week, in partnership with the GI Museum in Gaucher, we interview veterans of the military about their experiences abroad. We'll air these stories unedited and unchanged. These heroes were there on the front lines and lived through unspeakable horrors to tell us their story. And now, we sit down with a true hero.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Local Heroes, brought to you by WKFK TV in Pascagoula and the GI Museum in Gaucher, Mississippi. We're not in the GI Museum tonight. We have a very special guest. We're on location tonight. We're talking to Mr. Stan Ladner, a U.S. Navy veteran. He was on the battleship USS Missouri. Mr. Ladner, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Could you tell us how you got into the Navy and what year it was?
Well, I finished the 10th grade, and I was just a little over 17. In 1946, May the 14th, I was sworn in on my mother's birthday.
And your mother had to sign for you?
She had to sign for me at the time.
So after you signed into the Navy, signed up for the Navy, you had to go to boot camp?
Yeah, we went to Bainbridge, Maryland.
Anything memorable about boot camp? You're 17 years old.
It was a lot of fun, and it was short, because we had so many people coming in there. Normally we were scheduled for another 3 weeks, but they cut us short because they had too many people in there. And they sent people out to ships and so forth.
You're 17 years old, you're from Mississippi. You ever been away from home before?
Nope.
You're away from your mom, you're away from home. Were you homesick, or were you just having too much fun?
I was enjoying it.
Having too much fun. Okay, so your first assignment after boot camp was a battleship.
Yeah,
Which one was it?
The battleship Missouri. There was 150 of us went aboard the ship at the same time. And we all got 1 week's indoctrination. And that was working on the deck like everyone always do. Then after that, we lined up and they had checked our records, and then they decided what we were to do. I know one Lieutenant Brzezinski, he was a tough old character. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to be a machinist." He said, "Well, how'd you like to be fire control?" I said, "What's that?" And he told me. I said, "Okay by me." And 5 of us out of that whole crew got fire control.
So you didn't really go to an advanced course and learn fire control. You learned it on the job on the ship.
I did. I stayed there until 1947. Then I went to school in Great Lakes.
Oh, so you kind of got an on-the-job training before you went to school. When you first showed up and you saw this big 887-foot-long ship, what did you think of it?
The biggest thing is those big guns. I said, "Holy smokes, these things are humongous."
You're impressive. They were impressive. And life aboard the ship. Tell us about that. Where did you sleep?
Well, we slept up forward there, just forward of turret 1. This is where our compartment was. And we had about, we had 2 compartments because we had 90 people. And it was no air conditioning at the time, just your vents. But it was livable. I mean, at that time, you didn't have time to worry about stuff like that. You had too much to do.
Now, these ships were so big, they were kind of like floating cities, weren't they?
Yes.
You basically had everything on there you needed: a library, a laundry, medical. You even had a surgery department where you could do surgery, big chow hall.
And a gidunk stand.
And a gidunk stand. Tell everybody, our viewers, what gidunk in the Navy meant.
Well, that's where they sell ice cream and cookies and things like that you can buy.
Kind of like a soda shop in the Navy.
Soda jerk like.
Soda jerk. And somebody had to have that duty, didn't they?
Yes, the supply people, commissary men took care of that.
You even had a little PX on there, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, we had a good-sized PX.
Good-sized PX on board the ship. And so you went out on the cruises on board the ship, and what were your cruises doing in the 40s? What was your purpose?
What we were doing is taking cruises, training midshipmen. And we'd go up and down the East Coast from Maine to Florida, down into the Caribbean. Then we'd go into the Mediterranean and train the midshipmen on ship handling, gunnery, engineering, anything they needed, we put them through it.
Did you manage to transit the Panama Canal in any of these cruises?
Yes.
That's kind of tight, that big
It
ship,
was.
isn't it?
We were 108 foot wide, and you had about 6 inches on each side.
Did you get up on deck to watch this happen?
Oh, everyone was up on deck.
Everyone was on deck?
If you wasn't on watch, you were on deck.
Amazing, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
How long did it take y'all to get through the canal?
Well, to get through the locks itself probably took 3 hours on the Atlantic side. Then you had the same thing on the opposite side. So it's probably 6 hours from one to the other.
Do you ever get to participate in any kind of gunnery practice, gunnery training?
Oh, yes. Down in Vieques, we'd go in with our big gun, well, all the guns, but the big guns, and we'd lay out a pattern of fire there. Then Marines would go in and practice landing.
So you had a Marine complement on board ship too, didn't you?
Oh, yes. We had those Marines, but these were regular land-based Marines that would go in and make the invasions.
What did you think of the 16-inch guns? Did you ever get to see them fire?
Yes, I've seen them fire, and I also fired them.
You fired them 16-inch guns
Yes.
yourself?
Down in the plotting room there, we had 2 handles that we had. One was for a buzzer. You clicked it 3 times, and the 3rd click, you pulled the trigger. And that's to let the people in the turret know that you were going to fire.
So you actually were not in the turret when you were firing the guns. You were in another location.
I was 5 decks down below the armor deck.
Amazing.
16-inch armor deck right above our head.
And your job was to maintain, that's to repair the electronics of these fire control systems.
Yeah, operate and maintenance.
Did your fire control systems also control the 5-inch gun turrets?
Yes, we had a plotting room next to us with 5-inch. In my time on the Missouri, I got half my time was on the big guns, half of it was on the anti-aircraft guns.
And you also had some 40mm quad
Yeah, that's all in the anti-aircraft. 5-inch, 40mm, and 20mm.
Now, this is before the age of the transistor.
Right.
So all of the electronics on the battleship that you were working on was something called vacuum tubes.
Yes.
Now, most of the young folks out there aren't going to know what a vacuum tube is, but it's a device that acts like a switch, a valve of sorts, but it has a filament in it and it gives off heat.
It gives a lot of heat off.
Did you have any air conditioning in your fire control system?
No.
So you just had vents and all
We
this?
just had vents at that time.
Amazing. That
And-
had to be pretty warm.
It got warm in the radar rooms, especially when you were closed up. But they were made to withstand that heat. And they were also made to withstand the shock from firing the big guns.
Did the whole ship move when the 16-inch guns were fired?
Well, they said it did. It moved a couple of feet. I never did see it, but there was enough force there to do it, I guarantee you.
You could feel the deck actually shake or move.
Oh,
when the-
yes. Because we'd go back into compartments after firing the big guns, and you'd have light bulbs that was broken out of the socket just from the shocking.
Amazing. Amazing. Could you hear the guns where you were?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you just feel it?
Well, you felt them, and I guess you might say you hear them, too, because those things are just noisy. Well, the big armor-piercing shells weighs 2,700 pounds. That's what goes out the barrel. And you got 6 90-pounds bag of powder behind that is what fires them out.
For each round fired.
For each round fired.
Amazing. This is just amazing to talk about that much powder and that big a shell. It's almost like shooting a Volkswagen.
It is. That's the old saying, just like shooting a Volkswagen.
Now you're taking midshipmen out and you're training them, and you get into the Mediterranean. Anything happen in the Mediterranean unusual, or just a regular cruise through the Med?
Most of the time it was pretty normal run. Occasionally you run into some items in there that may not have been. Get into Sicily, get into Palermo, and places like that. You had to be careful.
Run into any high seas on the battleship?
Oh, good Lord, yes.
But the battleship tended to handle those better than the smaller ones, did it?
Yes, but I've seen that bow of that big battleship go all the way under, all the way back to turret 1. And when that joker come up, you should have seen the water that it sent up in the air, about 60 feet high.
Did you get a little apprehensive when you saw the bow of that battleship go that far under the water? No?
That's one thing I can say. Rough weather never did bother me. I enjoyed watching it.
I was about to ask you if you ever got seasick, but the answer to that
Nope.
question is no, I didn't.
I was, guess, one of the lucky few.
Now, you also managed to get your hands on some pictures.
Yes.
And these are some pretty historic pictures, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
And they're the pictures of the surrender that were signed on board the deck of the Missouri.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us how you managed to get that?
Well, there was one of the photographers in the shop, photographer shop, would sell you a set of these pictures for $5. I seen one of my buddies with a set of them. I said, "Where'd you get those?" He told me. I said, "I want a set." So he took me down, gave him $5, and I got a set.
So this photographer was kind of doing his own thing, and it really wasn't like sanctioned by the Navy or the ship.
No, it wasn't.
But he was making them from the original
They're
negative?
made from the original film of the surrender.
Well, Mr. Ladner, we're going to have to stop right there and take a short break. But we're going to come back with more with Mr. Stan Ladner, known as the Battleship Man. And when we come back, we'll tell you why. Don't go away. Welcome back to Local Heroes here on WKFK TV 7. Tonight, we're talking with Mr. Stan Ladner in Gulfport, Mississippi. And when we went to the break, we said he was Mr. Battleship Man. We're going to have to leave you at that because we've got another important thing to talk about here. Is Mr. Ladner's collection of original photographs of the surrender of the Japanese on board the USS Missouri in 1945. And Mr. Ladner told you about getting the pictures from a photographer's mate on board the Missouri. Mr. Ladner, you've got some pictures here that are absolutely probably unpublished. And tell us about some of the photographs. The first picture in your album is of the Missouri actually sitting in Tokyo Bay.
Yes.
Ready for the surrender. Beautiful picture of the ship. And then we've got some more pictures here of the Japanese delegation on board the deck. We've got some pictures of, I think everybody on board that ship must have been on deck to watch this.
They were. There's some of the other pictures I don't have. It shows they're hanging from everywhere.
And marking the spot to this day on board that ship is a big brass disc, a medallion of sorts that says on this spot the surrender ending World War II was signed.
Yeah, it's about 14, 15 inches in diameter, implanted right in the deck on the O2 level where the surrender was signed.
Douglas MacArthur was there, a representative of every Allied nation was there, representatives from the Empire of Japan, that was called back then, was there. And you've got photographs of all of these individuals who are signing these documents, some that I've never seen published before, at this special table that was on board the ship. Amazing photographs, Mr. Ladner. I bet you this is the best $5 you've ever spent.
Probably.
And these pictures have been in other museums and in different areas before in displays, have they not?
Yes, sir.
You loaned them to the Pensacola Naval Aviation Museum?
CV.
And the CB Museum in Gulfport, Mississippi?
They took them down there.
And you're going to be able to see these as we talk about these on camera tonight. Also, Mr. Ladner, somebody came aboard ship while you were on board ship, and he happened to be a president of the United States. Tell us who that was.
President Truman came aboard and presented the ship with a silver set.
And that was year 1949. 1949. What was it like to receive a president of the United States on board your ship?
Oh, it was great. He'd been aboard there about 3 times, but this is the only time even they brought the silver set. And the silver set cost $65,000 at that time. Each piece has got the state seal engraved.
The state seal of Missouri?
Right, state seal of Missouri engraved on it.
Did you ever get to see that thing?
Oh yes, they put it on display where the crew could see it.
Was it like Very ornate, very pretty, very beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
I mean, it was, because the state seal is all in color. It's not just engraved.
Oh, amazing. The preparations to receive the president, I'm sure everything on that ship was shined 3 times, wasn't it?
More.
More than 3 times?
Yeah, everything was prepared for him to come aboard.
Excellent. Is there anything else memorable about your time on the Missouri?
Well, we'd stop out in the middle of the Atlantic, have a swim call.
So the ship would actually come to a complete stop in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean?
Yes, and everyone had a chance to go swimming if they wanted to. We had lifeboats out from around the ship, Marines on there with rifles in case they seen any sharks.
Did you ever see any sharks?
Nope.
Did you go swimming?
I went swimming one time, and it's about 25 feet from the main deck down to that water, and that's a long haul.
So you jumped?
No, they wouldn't let us jump. You had to go down rope ladders.
Oh, wow. And you only did it once?
I did it only once. There's no bottom you can touch. So you had to...
No, sir, not in the Atlantic Ocean.
So
no bottom in the Atlantic.
So you had to get back to the ship fast if you wasn't a good swimmer.
But how was the water out there? Was it clear? Was it?
It was clear, and we'd do it when the seas was smooth and salty.
You only did it once. I don't blame you. I really don't blame you for that one.
It's the only time I did it.
Now, is there anything else that happened while you were on the Missouri that was kind of unusual and memorable?
Well, one of the most unusual things is we ran aground in Chesapeake Bay. And we sat there for about 18 days before they got us off.
So the ship is basically stranded.
It was stranded tight. It had 8,000 tons pressure down on the bottom from where it was stuck.
And how did they manage to get the ship unstuck, so to speak?
Well, they dredged from alongside the ship with dredges, dredged a channel in behind of us, and had about 18 tugs pulling on us when we finally got off.
The ship suffer any damage?
Yes, it had 3 plates on the starboard side up forward that was dented, and one of them had a hole in it. From what they say, may have been an anchor or something, or another old piece of a ship that got stuck into it and put the hole in there.
So obviously you had a little flooding going on there.
We're just in one little compartment. So we got off there, we went into dry dock in Portsmouth, they replaced those, and we're out and going again.
But you managed to get off the ship once or twice.
I was guard mail petty officer, and I had to go over to the Navy base and pick up papers for the ship. So I got to go, they had a tugboat that go back and forth, and so I went that way. There's only a few of us that got to get off that way.
But you went back out on the Missouri, and you spent some more time on the Missouri, but your time on the Missouri was about 4 years, and then that was over.
Yeah, 4 years I spent on the Missouri.
And then where did you go?
I went to the Carrier Roosevelt, the new Midway class carrier at the time.
Life on a carrier was a little different, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, I stayed on it only about 6 months, and they wanted a fire control to volunteer to go down in Florida and put an aviation repair ship in commission. At the time, I wasn't married, and I said, well, heck, I'll take it. So I went down and put another ship in commission.
And that was the?
Megara. It was an aviation repair ship, converted LST.
Converted LST. And was it for like seaplanes that would land next?
No. We had a convoy of ships, gasoline tanker, AVA, fuselage repair, and engine repair. We'd go in areas where there wasn't any shops, but they had runways. And we'd go in there and anchor, and then the crews would go over there on runways and set up shop to repair planes that came in.
And you were working on fire control systems on that ship?
I was working on fire control systems on it.
You couldn't have had any really big guns on the old
Nope, it was just 40 millimeter.
And after that duty, did you go to another ship or for sort?
I went to a number of ships, but one of the main ones is the Vega, USS Vega, AF-59, which was built over in Ingalls. We went in commission in 1955.
So was that you basically came back to the coast. You're from the coast, and you basically came back to the coast.
I came back at that time. I stayed at home and drove back and forth to Pascagoula for about 3 months because I was in the pre-com crew.
And you spent some time on that ship, of course.
Yes, I did. I spent about a couple of years on it.
So it was AF-59, and could you tell our viewers what AF stood for?
Refrigeration ship. The entire ship was refrigerated. We could take and use it as a freezer for everything on there.
And you were basically supplying food to the other ships while at sea?
Yes. We made many trips from Oakland, California, out into the Pacific to supply food and stuff to all the other ships.
Did you notice that was the Pacific Ocean different than the Atlantic? I mean, was there something that was different about it? It was more...
Well, the trips were much longer, and it was rough sometimes. I mean, it was extremely rough, but the sunsets out there were beautiful. You very seldom see sunsets like that in the Atlantic.
And did you ever get seasick when you were in the Navy?
No, sir.
Not a one?
Not one.
Well, you were a lucky man. And after you went to the AF-59, did you go to a destroyer?
I went to the destroyer USS Preston, DD-795. It's a Fletcher class, same one that's over in Baton Rouge. And it was some fine duty. We had a good crew, good skipper, and we won every award there was around.
But it was a smaller ship than the battleship.
Oh, good Lord, yes.
Much smaller than the aircraft carrier.
376 feet long, 37 feet wide, and maybe 2,200 tons.
And they call those things tin cans.
That's the reason. That's what they were. Floated like a tin can.
Floated like a tin can, but it didn't have a whole lot of armor. And when you were in rough weather, how did the destroyer act compared to the battleship?
Roll a lot and pitch a lot. I mean, roll too. You roll 30 degrees and nothing flat.
Amazing. What about, you couldn't sleep in that?
Oh, it depends. I always managed to.
You always managed to sleep at 30-degree rolls on the ship. How about chow? You couldn't have chow, could you?
Well, that's the only thing. You had to have K rations or something like that because it couldn't cook. But only very few times we got in that type of weather.
So after your service on the destroyer, you went to?
I went to U.S. Naval Academy as instructor.
And you were instructing classes in what?
We were instructing all the middies in shipboard gunnery systems. We're in Dahlgren Hall there at the Academy. And Roger Staubach was there at the time I was there. He was quarterback for the midshipmen.
This was the old analog computers. This was before the computers.
Oh, yes, these was all analog computers. But at the Academy there, we taught gunnery, shipboard gunnery. We taught explosive labs, and we taught rocket thrust. We had rocket thrust set up.
Was there ever a picture of you taken while you were at the Academy?
Yes. I had one picture taken when I was instructing. I didn't know what they were going to do with it. I just know they took it. Then sometime later, there was an article in the papers written by President Kennedy, each article from each of the military academies. And that's where my picture was. I was a picture there from the Naval Academy, no name under anything, but people recognized it and wanted to know if that was me. And that was just about 3 weeks before he was assassinated.
Amazing, amazing, amazing story. Okay, we're out of time for this show, Mr. Ladner, but we're going to come back and do another show. And I told you about him being called the Battleship Man, and we didn't get to that in this show, but the next show we're going to totally devote to something this man does that is absolutely beautiful and amazing. So you don't want to miss it. So join us again on our next episode of Local Heroes here on WKFK TV 7.